Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
When you check out at the pharmacy, you see the journey from idea to medicine, thanks to our intellectual property system, or IP for short. IP safeguards inventions, like a new way to prevent seizures or lower cholesterol. And IP supports competition from other brands. Then, lower-cost generics, which are 90% of prescriptions filled in the U.S. Innovation, competition, lower costs, thanks to IP. Learn more at phrma.org/IP Works Wonders.
Hey everyone, it's Mary, and I have a favor to ask of you. We are working on an episode about how regular folks are feeling the impact of federal government cuts in their neck of the woods. So we want to hear from you. Do you have neighbors who are suddenly out of work? Things you can no longer do or say because federal funding of one kind or another is suddenly drying up? Let us know. The way to do it is to give us a ring. Our number is 646-582-0091. That's 646-582-0091. Okay, on with the show. Donald Trump, showman that he is, wants you to know that tonight is going to be huge. Tonight is the night he gives the annual presidential address to Congress. Sometimes it's known as the State of the Union. He'll walk into the House chamber after being announced by the Sergeant at Arms, and Slate's Jim Newell, who covers Congress, he'll be watching. What kind of Congress is President Trump walking into? Is it a united Congress, a functional Congress, a Congress that's set up for success?
Well, I think you know the answer to that. It is divided on several different fracture lines.
These fracture lines, they might be hard to see tonight with the whole GOP grinning and clapping. But Jim says the fractures are real, and they were obvious last week. That's when the House took a shot at passing a framework for the president's priorities, which include a $4.5 trillion tax cut, along with funding for the border and more money for defense.
Yeah, so the Republicans are trying to do the very first step of moving President Trump's agenda. They're trying to roll it all into one big bill.
One big, beautiful bill.
One big, beautiful bill. Republicans thought that attendance that day meant they could lose 2 of their own members and still pass the resolution. But then some of these Democrats, one member who had a baby a month ago, one member who had surgery and hadn't been around for a while, they just kind of materialized just short of the vote. There were reports of them being found within the building.
This was a pressure tactic. The Democrat with the newborn, she toted him around with her. The Democrat who'd had surgery, he was hobbling around on a walker. They'd shown up because Republican margins are so tight that having just a couple of unexpected members in the chamber can create chaos, which it promptly did. First, the vote got delayed. People started going home. Then the legislators all got called back to get the framework passed. It was reported that Trump was kind of getting on the phone with people, twisting arms to make sure people voted the way he wanted. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those conversations happened in private, but there's been some reporting that in the end, Victoria Schwartz from Indiana, she was one of the last 2 holdouts they needed. People in the cloakroom just off the House floor could hear Trump over the phone screaming at her to get her in line. And she eventually, after saying all day, no chance I will vote for this. I don't change my word once I've given it. Well, she flipped. This was the first difficult vote, right? So we're really just beginning here. And it's going to be, I think this is probably 1/10 of the chaos we'll see going down the road.
Today on the show, as Trump revels in his big speech, just remember, We are just getting started. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.
Every day, thousands of Comcast engineers and technologists, like Kunle, put people at the heart of everything they create.
In the average household, there are dozens of connected devices. Here in the Comcast family, we're building an integrated in-home Wi-Fi solution for millions of families like my own. It brings people together in meaningful ways.
Kunle and his team are building a Wi-Fi experience that connects 1 billion devices every year. Learn more about how Comcast is redefining the future of connectivity at comcastcorporation.com/Wi-Fi.
With Donald Trump doing all he can to nab the spotlight for himself, regular government procedures may seem beside the point. After all, if the president can fire thousands of federal workers at will, what's Congress doing anyway? But Donald Trump still needs to convince legislators to get with his program if he wants to unlock the big bucks for his political priorities, or even just keep the government going. Jim Newell says, over the next few months, there are going to be a couple of negotiations to keep your eye on.
So, yeah, the two things are, one, there's the budget resolution sets up the reconciliation bill, which is Republicans' whole, flagship agenda that they're trying to achieve on their own, completely without Democratic help. So that is something that's going to last several more months at least. The other separate thing is they have to fund the government by March 14th or not. But that is the deadline when funding expires.
And that's the thing that could shut down the government?
Yes. Government funding will expire March 14th if they don't have a deal. And that is something that will have to be bipartisan because you need 60 votes for that in the Senate. And you'll need a lot of Democratic votes in the House, too, just because there are a lot of Republicans who have never and will never vote for a spending bill. So
basically, a lot of ambitious things happening in Congress right now. But I want to focus us on the budget resolution just because that's where Donald Trump is trying to make his agenda happen. And I guess maybe we should start with the fact that there was some disagreement in the party about whether to do this all as one thing, one big, beautiful bill, or a couple of bills. And I want to talk about why there was this split in the Republicans about how to do it.
People in the Senate and some others wanted to just split into two, where in the first bill, it'd be smaller. You do money for boosting defense spending, border security and immigration enforcement, energy production, things like that.
Popular stuff
for all Republicans to vote for that they thought could have been easy. And the thinking there was we'll get a quick win on that. And then we'll move to tax, which is going to be a more complicated problem.
Yeah, extending the Trump tax cuts.
Yeah.
To me, it seems strategically smart to jam it all into one big bill. Even if I don't agree with what's in the bill, it just sort of leverages President Trump's support and popularity as much as it exists right now and forces people to do the thing they may not want to do because they want to look like they're supporting Trump.
Right. But I think the thinking that won out, which was Speaker Johnson and some other House Republican leaders, was they were kind of humble and were like, have you seen the House of Representatives? You think we can get two bills through? So their thinking was, we want to get it all done through one, because some of the changes that you would do with the tax bill and spending cuts, you need the things like border enforcement, unleashing energy, that sort of thing, as the carrot to get the rest of the stuff to go down.
They're sweeteners, basically.
Yeah. So they were like, let's just all do it as one. If we try to split up into two, there's no guarantee the second would ever happen. Or it could just all fall apart and it could take too long.
This is all being passed through a process called reconciliation. Why is that important? How does that change how this bill has to work?
So reconciliation, it's a budget process, but you get one per year, and it is not passing it is not subject to the Senate filibuster, meaning you do not need 60 votes in the Senate. So we've seen at the start of Trump's first presidency, at the start of Biden's presidency, the big party line thing you want to get done that you know the other party is not going to cooperate on, you try to do it through your one reconciliation shot.
What is supposed to be in here in like a fantasy world of, everything Trump wants to get done?
Roughly about $200 billion would go towards border security and immigration enforcement, building the wall, hiring a lot more agents, things like that. I mean, they have to put all the details of paper, but that's what they're looking at. You'd see another 150 billion going to defense spending. And then the main event, the big showstopper. So the Trump tax cuts of 2017 expire at the end of this year. Those have to be, in their estimation, renewed. And they have to be, Trump has some other new tax ideas that he wants to add to it, like no tax on tips, maybe no tax on Social Security, things like that.
Who do these tax cuts benefit for the most part?
So, I mean, everyone got a tax cut in 2017. But, obviously a disproportionate amount is going to go to people at the top because they have more money. So when you see people say $4.5 trillion in tax cuts for the rich, it's not that much. It's probably like $1.5 trillion for tax cuts for the rich.
And the rest is tax cuts for everyone else?
Yeah.
The main thing I've heard about this resolution is that in order to cement these tax cuts, you have to slash Medicaid. Medicaid is known as health care for the poor, but it covers a whole lot of people, like 72 million people, 40% of births nationwide. It's a lot of people. Why is Medicaid seen as the thing that will have to be sacrificed for these tax cuts?
It's because of the box that they put themselves in politically. You look at the big drivers of spending in the government: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, defense, and interest on the debt. But he will not touch, Trump said, he will not touch Medicare. He will not touch Social Security. They're increasing defense spending. So then what does that leave you with? Medicaid is the biggest pot of money remaining. It's about $1 trillion a year. A little less than that, but it's the biggest one that they have not ruled themselves out from going after. And so that is why, as they're looking to appease people who want big spending cuts, they're looking to undo some of the damage these tax cuts will do to the budget. That's where they've kind of trained their sights.
You've pointed out that slashing services like Medicaid isn't necessarily the most sensible policy for the GOP right now, just because of how their constituency is changing. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so a little background. This is not their first go at Medicaid. 2017, when they tried to do Obamacare repeal, that was kind of a fig leaf that was really about Obamacare. The biggest thing in that bill was completely reforming Medicaid, and the bill died because there's so much hostility to that. So if you look 8 years later, the Republican coalition has changed. People making under $50,000 a year voted for Donald Trump in the election last year. That's the first time that's happened in decades for a Republican nominee for president. So when you're looking at going after Medicaid again to find the savings that you want, you're naturally going to be targeting some of the converts you've brought to your side. And so it's kind of a point of tension now that they have the same old Republican agenda, go after the big spending program for the poor. But there are a lot more low-income people in their coalition right now.
The thing is, I was reading some healthcare policy people who pointed out that those constituents, there's a chance they don't even know they're on Medicaid. Like, Medicaid is not necessarily called Medicaid. Like in Alaska, it's called Denali Care. In Colorado, it's Health First Colorado. Husky Health is another. It has all of these different names in different places. So people may be thinking they're cutting spending for someone else when really Republicans are cutting spending for them.
I mean, that would make perfect sense. If you think, too, about Obamacare, it expanded Medicaid eligibility to, 10 or 20 million more people. A lot of those, states, when they took those up, they set up these own programs where you call it, Husky Care or whatever, and they'd rebrand it because that made it more politically palatable to do in a red state. You wouldn't have like Obamacare Medicaid program because maybe they'd have trouble signing people up, or you'd have trouble passing it through the legislature. So I can see a lot of people kind of not being entirely sure where they're getting it from, but Medicaid has built a pretty strong constituency. I think part of the reason they've targeted in the past is because people think you can get away with it by finding the money there. But I think it really won't go over well if they do go down this path. It's pretty politically fraught.
Well, how do they not go down the path if they need to find the money?
I would absolutely love to get into this. So right now they have a $4.5 trillion hole that they're creating with tax cuts, according to their current designs. What if you could say that was actually zero? Though you were not creating a hole at all. This is something the Senate is considering and will probably do.
Like waving a magic wand and being like, pay no attention. There's no debt here.
If you assume that these tax cuts are going to expire at the end of the year, then redoing them for another 10 years would cost $4.5 trillion. But if you, as the Senate is thinking, budget according to current policy, which is that these tax cuts are the law of the land, we're just continuing them for another 10 years, then it costs $0 to continue current policy. So if you use that kind of method, then you don't need to, one, cut so deeply into Medicaid or some other programs to lessen the budget impact of these tax cuts. And also, and this is a very key thing for the Senate and for Trump, they want to make these tax cuts permanent. And so as long as after 10 years, it's not increasing the deficit, then it can count as permanent law. Otherwise, it will only last for 8 or 9 or 10 years.
Hold it, but isn't this a lie?
Yeah, we should clarify here. No matter which accounting method you use, the same amount of money is being spent and taxed. Like, this is just kind of a sleight of hand here. It's a very weedsy procedural thing, but also, if you're someone who has no interest in any of what the Republicans are doing, maybe you want them to use current policy accounting because then they'll feel less compelled to go after Medicaid. Given how kind of weedy this gets, even as we talk about it, I think most people aren't going to really pay close attention to this. But it is going to be pretty important. And I think this is how they achieve their goals of, one, renewing the tax cuts, the 2017 tax cuts, adding some of the things Trump wants, like no tax on tips, and not cutting Medicaid or other programs as severely as they want to. It's just do it with an accounting trick.
After the break, what Trump's speech tonight could tell us.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
I'm ready for my life to change.
ABC Sunday, American Idol returns.
Give it your all. Good luck. Come out with the golden ticket.
Let's hear it.
This is a man's world.
I've never seen anything like it.
And a new chapter begins.
We're going to Hollywood!
Carrie Underwood joins Lionel Richie, Luke Bryan, and Ryan Seacrest on American Idol. Season premiere Sunday, 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Your data is like gold to hackers. They're selling your passwords, bank details, and private messages. McAfee helps stop them. Secure VPN keeps your online activity private. AI-powered text scam detector spots phishing attempts instantly. And with award-winning antivirus, you get top-tier hacker protection. Plus, you'll get up to $2 million in identity theft coverage, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
So tonight, presidents usually use a speech like the one Trump is giving to set their agenda for the year, tell people what's important to them. There's often a lot of filler in there, stuff that doesn't get done. It's like ideas. Like, here's what I'm thinking, guys. Do you think some Republicans are hoping Trump basically gives them guidance on how to manage this big, beautiful bill he wants to get through, given how hard it's been for them already?
I don't know. I don't know if there's any like one specific question that they want answered. We know Trump pretty well at this point, and they know him pretty well. So he could say one thing in his State of the Union and then say a completely different thing the next day. Trump is there to watch his adoring fans cheer for him, maybe to pick a fight or two with the Democrats. I'm curious to see what he says about the Russia-Ukraine situation, since there's a lot of people in Congress who are like a little freaked out. Not that they'll actually say anything about it because they're a little too nervous to do that. But I'm interested to see how he approaches that.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm a GOP congressperson, though, sitting there, or a senator sitting there in the audience for the speech tonight, I got to say it's got to be a weird split screen where here you are in Congress, the president, clapping for the president. And then when you go home to your district, all these guys are having these contentious meetings with their constituents. It feels like whiplash to me. Like, I don't know how you make those two things make sense in your head if you're one of these people. I just wonder what folks who are on Capitol Hill tell you about that.
Well, I think for now, at least, they're going with these town halls where you've seen congressmen getting screamed at are like astroturfing. It's been organized by left groups like Indivisible, who are just staging these scenes or whatever to get media coverage.
We don't have evidence of that. I mean, Indivisible is asking people to go, but we don't have evidence that there's some great movement.
Yeah, they are doing that, but that's also okay. Like, you are able to have groups like organize basically protests or whatever, but it's not like they're paying people to say things. I mean, people are rightly pissed off. But if you're in a 75% Republican district or whatever, they're probably chalking it off to, these are 200 of the people in the 25% of Democrats or something who are doing it. I think that eventually they'll see that this is not just an op by the Democrats, that actually their agenda, if they go down a Medicaid path, like, buddy, you are actually becoming politically unpopular. It's not just a photo op or something you get media coverage. But for now, that's how they're explaining it to themselves.
Okay, let's do like kind of a lightning round about this speech tonight. Do you think Elon will be there? Yes, no?
I bet he is there. I bet he is.
Do you think all the Democrats will show up?
No.
There's this, growing constituency of people who are basically like, there's no reason any Democrat should show up. There's a chance they could all not be there.
I bet there's still some. I bet ultimately probably even a majority of them are there, but it will not be packed attendance. But you know how Democrats get. They think, let's all boycott, and then they start to get squeamish, and they're like, but then people will think we look like children, and then they just wring their hands for a while and they don't really end up doing anything. I could see how that's how it goes. Or they do a walkout for like 10 seconds and then come right back, and they're like, look, we did a walkout.
Alyssa Slotkin's doing the Democratic response from Michigan. Is that right?
Correct.
Do you think that's the right move? Like, I was thinking about the Democratic response, and I was like, why don't you just have like Obama and Bush do the Democratic response together and be like, we're at a new time for our democracy. We are breaking with Europe. We must have an urgent response. You know what I mean? Like, there's a way you could do it that actually projects emergency.
I don't think you could pay either Obama or Bush enough to do that. I think they're just...
Really?
Yeah, they don't care. They're gone. I mean, they might care, but they're not. They're in hiding now.
They're like, it's up to you, America. Sorry.
They have a ton of money. They're just chilling, painting and playing golf. I mean, it sounds very nice.
The other idea I had for the Democratic response is like, just have federal workers do it. Like, find like 5 or 10 of your best federal workers and like have them explain like what's going on with them. Do that. But because that also projects like, hold it, we're breaking with tradition because we're in an unprecedented time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think that'd be cool. I know that a lot of them are bringing laid off federal workers as their guests. I think they're struggling to figure out how to make the case to people that federal workers losing their job is a thing that you all should be worried about. I think that's something that we'll learn the hard way eventually, unfortunately. But I think right now they don't really know necessarily how to do that, because there are a lot of people who just on the surface, see, they're trimming the fat in the government. This is great, but aren't reading into you're leaving people without medicine around the world,
Yeah. If you had to guess one way this speech is going to look different from other presidential congressional addresses, what would you say? Like, there's always the same pomp and circumstance of the president is announced, he walks down the aisle, he gets patted on the shoulder, people shake his hand, et cetera, et cetera. Is Trump, who just had this blow up with Zelensky in the White House and came out the other side saying, well, that'll be great television. Is there one way you think he's going to change how this looks that we will all note, and what would it be?
Well, it's already been veering. The State of the Union / not State of the Union has been veering into more of an interactive thing in recent years. Like there was a couple of years ago, Biden got into it with Republicans about Medicare. There's kind of a back and forth discussion there. I could see Trump taking that to a kind of Trump level. I think there'll just be a lot of back and forth. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago when he had the governors at the White House and he kind of called out Janet Mills, the governor of Maine?
Yeah, and she spoke right back.
I would be surprised if there's more at that, if he's like pointing out, Schumer or Jeffries or AOC or something, and just like trying to get into it.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. With this legislation, the budget resolution, what are the key dates folks need to have in mind to understand what's happening?
The only kind of semi-firm commitment that's been made is Mike Johnson said he wants to have this all done by May-ish. I am skeptical about that. Even if things go relatively well, I mean, the next thing is like the House and Senate have a lot of differences right now on how to bridge these two blueprints they have. That itself could take a few weeks. And then they have to write the bill. And it's going to be a very long bill with trillions and trillions of dollars in policy changes, though depending on which accounting they use, maybe fewer trillions in changes. On the other front, the government funding bill, that's March 14th. That's going to be in 10 days. That's a whole other hour-long podcast about that.
Jim, thank you for explaining it all to me. I'm grateful for you.
Thank you. I hope I did an okay job explaining it. It's kind of tricky.
Jim Newell is a senior politics writer at Slate. And that's our show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, Madeline Ducharme, and Ethan Oberman. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time.